Hello everyone, Lorenzo here. I recently did a video about the T951, saying how good this gun is. Some of you said the T03 is better. So the T03 is basically, let's say, the older brother of the T951. Technically, a more premium platform, let's say, that's the general consensus, a more premium platform in the 5.8 times 42 caliber compared to the T951. So I said, you know what? Let's test this. Let's see which one is better, or at least which one I like more, and make this comparison officially, and let's see what people think. So let's get straight into it. We're gonna test two builds for each one of the guns, a budget build and an expensive build. So starting with the T951, first of all, if we compare the base stats between the two guns, there is the baseline comparison. So as you can see, on a baseline, the T03 is basically better in every way, except for horizontal recoil control, which is a little bit worse for the T03, and ergonomics, which is the same, muzzle velocity is the same. Everything else is better for the T03 when you look at the stock weapon, right? Also, the T03 has slightly higher rate of fire with 700 RPM instead of 650. And also, the firing power of the T03 is mid-high, whilst the firing power of the T951 is medium. However, you can buff that up to high using the long barrel. Now, if we compare the price of the base weapon, the base T951 is, let me see, if we assemble from scratch, it's 73k, so that's really quite affordable. The base cost of the T03, if we assemble from scratch, is 120k. Now, let's build each gun up to a budget level, and let's see what, like, how expensive that is compared to performance. And let's say for budget, the budget build, we're still talking about, you know, a relatively good build. My budget for this would be proportionally 200k for the T951 and let's say 230 to 250k for the T03, because also the base gun is more expensive, and so I want to adjust a little bit for that. Starting with the budget build of the T951. This build right here has 87 vertical recoil control, 71 horizontal recoil control, 52 ergonomics, 47 effective range, high firing power. Those are some pretty damn good stats, and some key components that would make it, that would bring it over 90 recoil control are missing. But you can build this for 170k, guys. That is simply beautiful. We're gonna build this right here. And that is going to be our T951 budget build, which we're going to be testing, right? I think this is basically as good as it gets stat-wise. And this build right here is 260k. For me, what the budget build for this gun would look like is something like this. Here it is. Basically, change the rail. We put a good value for money for grip, so the triangular. We didn't really change the muzzle flash attachment, and yeah, we put a rail so that we can put our scope on. And a key component here is the better stock. Now, this build is 245k. Now, if we want to go premium with it, then we are going to want to have all the best attachments per category. And I will do that now. Let's see what kind of stats we end up with. So there you go. Now we have the best attachments per category. And if we complete this assembly from scratch, as you can see, the price here is 350K. So that's 100K more than the premium T951 and double the price of the budget T951, and it is about 100K more than the budget T03. Alright everyone, we're in the shooting range. So this is, let's say, our budget build. We're gonna test it with tier 4 ammo, and then we're gonna test it with tier 5 ammo. We're gonna test tier 4 ammo on tier 4 dummies. Alright, we're gonna start with the T951. And at 10 meters, let's see how many bullets it takes to destroy this tier 4 armor. 3 shots and the dummy went down. To the helmet, tier 4, 2 shots to the helmet. Now we go to 30 meters. And 2 to the helmet, exactly as before. Now we're gonna go to 50 meters. So here we're gonna be right on the edge of range. So basically, I think we're right outside of range here. Let me see. Yeah, we're right outside of effective range. It took 4 shots to the chest at 50 meters to kill that dummy with tier 4 armor. Now, we're gonna be doing the exact same process with the T03 and see if anything changes. 3 to the chest at 10. 3 to the chest at 30. 3 to the chest at 50. It does take 1 shot less at a 50-meter range. So I'm now gonna test hipfire at 10 meters and at 30 meters. So aiming center mass, it seems like most of the shots are on target. That was a deadly shot to the face. So that feels okay. Let's try the T03. The T03 does feel a little bit better in terms of hipfire. And now, one of my favorite tests, the recoil pattern and spread test. Once again, we're gonna start with the budget T951 at 25 meters. Let's see how it feels. So as you can see, after an initial correction, we stayed on target really quite well. Let's try that again. As you can see, I pretty much stayed almost perfectly on target throughout that entire spread. Only like 3 times I shot outside of the inner circle. I think that's pretty great. Once the gun stabilizes, it just goes like a laser, which is great. We're now gonna try the same thing with the budget T03. So you can already tell that for me, that was way harder to control. I'm gonna try again now that I have had 1 mag dump. I can give it another go and see how that feels. Yeah, as you could see in the reticle, the horizontal sway is way bigger in the budget T03 compared to the budget T951. And that must also be due to the fact that the T951 has much better, literally 71/58, much better horizontal recoil control. We're now gonna try killing tier 6 dummies with full auto bursts with tier 5 ammo in both guns. T951 and now T03. Yeah, look at that horizontal. I would say the two guns feel quite similar, with maybe a little bit more power due to the RPM behind the T03. I would maybe, this test I would say is probably feeling better in the T03. And alright, so that was the end of the budget test. We're now going to test a 250k T951 to a 350k T03. So respectively, the best possible build with both guns. And let's see which one feels better. So, guys, we are not going to repeat the armor piercing test because it's basically the same as with the budget builds, exactly the same. However, we are going to try the recoil controllability test first. So again, we're gonna mag dump at 25 meters. Let's put in a fresh mag so that everything is exactly the same, and let's see how these guns perform. I must say it doesn't feel so different from the cheap T951, which, remember, is about 70k cheaper than this build. Very good and controllable recoil pattern for the T951. Now we're gonna try the same thing with the T03 premium build, 350k worth. Once again, we're well on target, but it's just harder to control because of the horizontal sway. It just simply is. Let's try another one. Again, not bad, but the, yeah, I basically what I just said. I'm not gonna repeat myself. Yeah, it's the T951 is easier to control, at least for me. Let's try again hipfire test. All right, and now the T03. So at 20 meters, I actually feel like the T03 is not as good as the T951 at hipfire, as you can see. Let's try that. I mean hipfiring at 30 meters is not something very useful. You do feel the slightly lower RPM with the T951. So I would say that if you're very good at staying on target, the T03 might be better, but it's easier to stay on target and not really miss any shots out of your burst with the T951. So very small margins between the two guns, I would say. And that brings us to the end of our test. Of course, this test was in a controlled environment, was not in game. I will be playing more games with the T03. I mean, I already have played several and with both guns, and they're both obviously, as you can see, performing very well. If I had to pick a winner, let's do a winner, let's say for a couple of categories. Recoil control. is better in the T951. For me personally, it's honestly the T951 is so much easier to control for the amount of money that you're investing is really, really impressive, to be honest. When we look at accuracy, I think that the two guns are very, very similar. Of course, the T03 has that big advantage that you have 6 meters of extra effective range. So if you're shooting, for example, with tier 4 ammo, a target 50 meters away, you will need to hit them one less time to actually kill them in the chest. However, then you could argue that since it is harder to control the recoil on the T03, you will probably miss less shots on the T951 even at that range, and so then that effective range and that accuracy differential, which are benefiting the T03, might actually not be real benefits when shooting at range. Hipfire is for me better on the T03, and of course rate of fire, which is extremely important in this meta, is also better on the T03, and that's just a matter of fact. Now, which gun is better? I would say that if you are mag dumping at close range, you cannot go wrong with either gun. If you're mag dumping, hip firing at close range, I would pick the T03. If you are mag dumping, aiming in at close range, I would pick really either it's 50-50, maybe the T03 for the better rate of fire. At medium range, if I am mag dumping someone 30 meters away from me, that's medium range, 30 to 40 meters away, I would pick the T03, I think, any day. Because that easier to control recoil for me is actually better than having 50 RPM extra. For longer ranges, so 50 meter plus, I mean, obviously, as I already said, the T03 has better range, but yeah, the T03 has better range, but the T951 is easier to control. I would probably pick, it's hard to say. It's really hard to say. Maybe the T951, to be quite honest. Again, because of that easier to control horizontal recoil. Overall, for me, if I balance all of that against the price, if you forced me to pick the better gun for the price, better value for money, I would say the T951 is better value for money. To be fair, this build right here, the budget T951 build, 170k, this is the one that impressed me the most for the money. If I could spend anything, I would probably spend around 250k for the premium T951, and here you've got yourself a super, super impressive platform. But to be fair, the budget one pretty much almost feels very, very similar. As you saw from the recoil control pattern when full autoing these two guns, they are very, very similar. For me, to be honest here, like the best gun, if I had to elect one, is probably the budget T951. But take that with a grain of salt, because I feel like which gun you prefer between these two is in the end coming down to preference, because each gun gives you, let's say, opposite benefits and drawbacks. So depending on the situation that you're in, one will be better than the other. And so the one that you prefer will also depend on your playstyle, is what I'm trying to say. But overall use, overall better value for money, for me, the T951 takes the cake. Try these builds, let me know what you think. And without further ado, guys, I really, really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider liking, consider subscribing, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care, guys.